Hey everyone, tonight we'll delve into the most enduring, unsettling mystery of the Western world. Imagine you're standing on a rain-swept craggy shoreline, the kind of place where the mist clings to the water like a second skin. The waves crash with a hollow, mournful sound, a sound that has echoed through the centuries, carrying with it a single, unanswerable question. Where is King Arthur? Not where is his legend. We all know that, but where is the man himself? Where did he go? And why can nobody, no scholar, no historian, no treasure hunter, find his final resting place? You're about to hear a truth so bizarre, so intertwined with the very fabric of reality and myth, that you probably won't want to believe what you are about to hear. The history you've been taught, the legends you've been told, they are all a beautiful, sprawling lie designed to protect a secret so profound it could unravel the mortal world. So before the tension gets too high, take a moment to like the episode and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, close your eyes, imagine the ancient mountains, and let's unravel this epic tale together. The story begins not with a battle, but with a journey. You are no longer in the present day. You are on a small, ancient skiff, the kind of vessel that feels more like a whisper than a ship. The air is thick with the scent of salt and magic. The year is unwritten, unrecorded. You watch as three hooded figures, each a queen of a mythic realm, tend to a man who lies broken and bleeding in the center of the boat. This is Arthur, but not the king you know from the stories. This Arthur is old, scarred and fading, his lifeblood seeping into the wooden hull. His final battle, the one that ended with the traitor Mordred, left him mortally wounded. But what you are seeing is not just physical injury. You are witnessing the unraveling of a hero, the slow dissolution of a legend. The destination is Avalon, the legendary Isle of Apples. For centuries, people have imagined Avalon as a lush paradise, a misty sanctuary where heroes heal. But that's the mortal's fantasy. The truth is far stranger. Avalon isn't a place you can sail to. It is an idea, a dimension that exists parallel to our own. The three queens Morgana, the Lady of the Lake, and an unnamed third queen of the wastelands aren't taking Arthur to a hospital. They are transporting him to a different reality. The skiff doesn't move through the water. It glides through a veil, a shimmer of magic that separates the known world from the mythical. This is an ancient mythos, the idea of an otherworld existing beside our own, concept found in Celtic legends from Ireland to Wales. It's the world of the Fae, of deities who live not on a mountain, but in a parallel plane. A place where time is not linear and where death is simply a change of state. The bizarre detail: the Lady of the Lake, one of the most powerful sorceresses in all of British mythology, is said to have a crippling phobia of small terrestrial spiders. She claims they are fragments of primordial chaos that did not belong in this reality. Imagine this incredibly powerful being who can conjure a sword from a lake, recoiling in terror from a harmless arachnid. It's a subtle reminder that even deities have their absurd vulnerabilities. As the skiff slips through the veil, the world you know fades behind you. The sounds of crashing waves turn to a serene silence, and the salt-tinged air is replaced by the scent of unknown blossoms and a strange metallic temps. You watch as Arthur's body begins to shift, not healing, but transforming. His wounds close, not through magic, but because the very concept of wound is becoming irrelevant. He is becoming something else, something beyond human. But the question that remained, and the secret the queens were sworn to protect, was what was Arthur becoming, and why did he have to be taken from the mortal world forever? The skiff has vanished, and you are no longer a passenger. Now, you stand on a desolate hill in ancient Britain, a place of silent, grass-covered barrows, those great burial mounds of old. The air hums with a low, mournful sound, not of the wind, but of something far more ancient. These aren't just hills. They are monuments to forgotten kings and their buried secrets. You can almost feel the weight of history pressing down on you. As you walk, the ground feels unnaturally soft, as if the earth itself is trying to hold on to something buried deep within its core. This is where the legend of Arthur's curse takes root, a lesser-known but crucial part of the mythos. After the fracturing of his kingdom and the revelation of Guinevere and Lancelot's affair, An ancient curse, whispered by a forgotten druid, fell upon Arthur's lineage. It was a curse of silence, a spell woven into the very land that would ensure no one of his bloodline could ever find peace, nor could their final resting places ever be known. The curse isn't a simple magical affliction. It's a form of psychological and spiritual erosion. It compels the descendants of Arthur's line to wander, to be restless, and to hide their true identities. Think of it as a divine form of witness protection. This is a common trope in many ancient mysteries and Norse legends, the idea of a hero's bloodline being so potent and dangerous that it must be hidden from the world. A historical parallel can be found in the legends of the Fisher King, a figure often associated with Arthur's line, who is forever wounded and whose land suffers with him, reflecting the same kind of unending, silent sorrow. A quirky detail about this curse, often omitted from the ballads, is that it was said to be enforced by creatures called Tylwyth Teg, a type of Welsh fairy. Unlike the mischievous sprites of popular lore, these are described as being intensely logical and literal, almost like living paradoxes. One tale from a medieval manuscript describes them as creatures of pure logic, who could only speak in riddles that, when solved, would make no sense. They're bizarre. Nonsensical riddles would drive anyone seeking Arthur's secrets to the brink of madness, forcing them to abandon their quest. It's a genius psychological defense mechanism, the perfect way to ward off scholars and treasure hunters without the need for a single swing of a sword. You look out over the field of barrows and the silence is deafening. But then, a low whisper seems to rise from the earth itself. It's not a voice, but an idea, a nagging thought that you are not alone. You realize that the curse isn't just about hiding a tomb. It's about making the very idea of Arthur's tomb an illogical paradox. It makes the truth something you can't even hold in your mind for long. The barrows whisper, but they tell you nothing concrete. They are a physical manifestation of a psychological curse, a maze for the mind rather than for the body. The question that hangs in the air, the one that the Tylwyth Teg would never answer. Are these barrows empty, or are they all in some impossible way his final resting place? The barrows have faded, and you now find yourself standing at the edge of a deep, serene lake. The water is perfectly still, and it reflects the world above it with an unnatural clarity. This isn't just any lake. This is the Lake of Mirrors, a place mentioned in ancient Celtic folklore as a gateway to the otherworld. The air is cold and still, and you can see your own reflection looking back at you. But it seems distant, almost like an imposter staring back from a different dimension. This is the fabled lake, where the Lady of the Lake, a powerful deity in her own right, is said to have gifted and received Excalibur. However, the legends have a critical omission. They describe the giving of the sword, but not the first burial of it, a moment that was, in its own way, just as important as its final return. Before Arthur's final battle, a less-known prophecy stated that, for his kingdom to truly fall and for a new age to begin, the sword itself had to be hidden from the world's memory, not just its sight. The legend of Excalibur being returned to the lake is a beautifully poetic story, but the truth is a more convoluted metaphysical act. The Lady of the Lake didn't just reclaim a sword. She performed a ritual of unmaking. She took the blade, which was a symbol of divine right and justice, and submerged it in the Lake of Mirrors. But as it went under, the water didn't just hide it. The water, a magical substance that acts as a membrane between realities, mirrored the sword, creating 1,000 phantom blades. The original, the true Excalibur, was not hidden. It was spiritually dispersed, its essence scattered into countless alternate reflections, all of them physically untouchable and psychologically misleading. This act of dispersal is a common theme in Greek mythology, where powerful artifacts like the Golden Fleece are often protected not by being hidden but by being made inaccessible through a series of impossible trials or a constant state of flux. In a similar vein, the first burial of Excalibur was a form of protective chaos. It created an oral and visual echo of the sword, so that anyone who sought it would find only a frustrating, non-physical reflection. The quirky detail about the Lady of the Lake is that she was rumored to have a collection of mundane items that she considered more valuable than any magical artifact. One of these was a simple, tarnished bronze hand mirror that she kept because it did not lie, as all the great waters eventually do. You look into the water, and you see not one sword, but countless shimmering blades, each one beckoning you, each one a promise of power and destiny. But you know that to reach for them is to reach for a ghost. The reflections are so vivid, so real, that you can almost hear the metal singing in the silence. It's a cruel trick, a beautiful trap for the mind. But what was the true purpose of this illusion? Was it to protect the sword? Or was it a preliminary act of concealment, a practice run for a much bigger, much more important, and much more final disappearing act? The glassy surface of the lake of mirrors ripples and dissolves. And suddenly, you are not on its shore, but deep inside a bewildering structure. The air is cold and still, smelling of stone dust and forgotten time. The walls are not straight. They curve in impossible ways, and the corridors seem to lead back to where they began. You are in Merlin's forgotten labyrinth, a place that exists outside of normal physical laws. This isn't a simple stone maze. It's a non-Euclidean marvel, a place where geometry itself has been bent and broken by a powerful sorcerer's will. The labyrinth was not designed to keep people out, but to trap them in a state of eternal, pointless searching, a psychological torment far worse than any physical prison. This detail that a magical construct could defy the very rules of space is a recurring theme in ancient mysteries and Greek mythology, such as the Minotaur's labyrinth, which in some versions was said to warp the minds of those who entered it. Merlin, the architect of this impossible space, was a figure of immense power, but also of profound melancholy. He knew that Arthur's legend would draw countless seekers, and he understood that the best way to protect a secret was to turn the search for it into a self-defeating endeavor. He didn't want to kill the seekers, wanted to make them forget why they were even searching. The labyrinth is a physical manifestation of a psychological trap. You walk down a corridor and you find yourself back at the beginning, but with a nagging feeling that you have walked for days. Time and distance become meaningless. You see a light in the distance, a promise of an exit. But the faster you walk towards it, the further away it seems to get. The walls are covered in carvings of creatures that never existed, and runes that no longer hold meaning. They are a form of oral and visual noise. It's designed to fill your mind with static until the original reason for your quest is lost in the mental fog. A bizarre, yet crucial detail about Merlin himself is that he was said to be allergic to the concept of straight lines. A chronicler of his time noted that he would only build with curves, for a straight line was to him a lie that pretended a journey had an end. This deep-seated aversion is why the labyrinth is so disorienting. It's a reflection of his own mental landscape. Every turn is a contradiction, every path a dead end, and every whisper you hear is your own sanity fraying at the edges. You feel a wave of frustration and confusion wash over you. You can hear faint echoes of shouts and sobs, the lingering psychic residue of those who have been trapped here before. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and powerful magic users. Their greatest creations are often a reflection of their own deepest flaws and psychological hang-ups. Merlin's labyrinth is a prison built not of stone, but of his own tragic genius. The question that begins to form in your mind as you find yourself at the same spot for the 10th time is this: if this is what Merlin created to protect the idea of a hero's tomb, what was he trying to protect you from finding? The walls of the labyrinth crumble into dust, and you find yourself standing in the heart of a fallen kingdom. This is Camelot, but not the Camelot of shining spires and noble knights. This is a ruin, a ghost of a city. The grand hall is now a pile of broken stones. The once proud banners are tattered rags. And the silence is so profound it feels like a physical weight on your chest. This is the unmaking of Camelot, the slow, psychological decay of a perfect ideal. The kingdom didn't just fall in a single battle. It was eroded from within by mistrust, jealousy, and the heavy burden of a golden age that couldn't last. The legends speak of a great final battle, but the truth is that the kingdom was already dead before the final blow was struck. The psychological weight of this collapse is immense. You can almost feel the collective sorrow and despair in the air. This is a classic theme in Norse legends and ancient mysteries. The idea of a hero's paradise being impermanent, of a golden age that is destined to end in ash and tragedy. Think of the fate of Asgard, destined for Ragnarok, or the fall of Atlantis, a testament to the idea that even the most perfect civilizations are fragile. What truly brought Camelot to its knees was not a single traitor, but the corrosive effect of a lie. The secret affair between Lancelot and Guinevere wasn't just a betrayal. It was a crack in the foundation of the Round Table's entire ethical and moral code. Once the lie was out, the very ideals that held the kingdom together, chivalry, honor, and loyalty, became meaningless. The knights who had sworn to protect these ideals were left with no purpose. A strange and often overlooked detail from the time is the superstition that Camelot was built on the back of a sleeping dragon. The citizens, in an effort to appease the beast, would leave out bowls of milk and honey, a ritual believed to keep the dragon's slumber deep. A chronicler from that period noted that when the kingdom began to unravel, the offerings were forgotten, and the ground began to tremble, a subtle sign that the very foundation of their world was starting to shift. The tremors weren't just a metaphor for political unrest. They were a manifestation of the dragon's growing unease, a physical symptom of the kingdom's spiritual sickness. You stand in the ruins, and a chilling thought comes to you. Camelot was not a place, but an idea. A kingdom built on a dream that was too beautiful, too perfect to ever be real. Now, the real tragedy wasn't the final battle, but the slow, agonizing realization that the dream was a lie. This is a subtle observation on the nature of heroes and their kingdoms. They are often more fragile than the myths we build around them. But the question that haunted the few survivors, the question that would drive the next part of this story was this. If the kingdom built on a lie could fall so completely, what was the truth that the lie was protecting? Could it be the key to finding what was lost? The ruins of Camelot fade behind you, and you find yourself on a winding, forested path. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and moss. You hear the rhythmic sound of a man walking, his footsteps heavy and pained. This is Sir Gawain, one of the greatest knights of the Round Table, but he is not the proud, valiant hero you know from the legends. This is a man consumed by guilt. He is forever marked by the Green Knight's game, a moment in his life that defined him, a pact he swore to fulfill. The Green Knight, a powerful, otherworldly figure, had made a simple, yet profound, promise to Gawain. I shall live to see you again. Gawain's hollow heart is not a physical ailment, but a spiritual one, the result of a promise that could never be kept. The Green Knight was not a man, but a manifestation of nature itself, a deity of the wild who existed outside of the mortal concept of time. Gawain, in his mortal arrogance, had made a promise to a timeless being. Gawain's failure to find the Green Knight for the final duel was a consequence of a fatal misunderstanding. He searched for a physical being in a physical world, but the Green Knight was everywhere and nowhere. This is a common theme in ancient mysteries and folklore. The idea of a hero's quest being impossible not because of physical challenges, but because of a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of the entity they are pursuing. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and the heroes who encounter. The mortals often apply their own limited understanding to beings who exist outside of those rules. Gawain's unkept promise led him on a long, solitary pilgrimage, a form of penance. He was destined to wander the earth, never to find peace, a living ghost of a fallen age. A quirky detail about the Green Knight passed down in obscure oral traditions is that he was a creature of a cyclical nature. He would shed his skin like a serpent every 1,000 years, and during this molting, he was at his most vulnerable. But he was also at his most dangerous, as his mind would be a paradox of 1,000 years of memories compressed into a single, terrifying moment of confusion. He would wander the earth as a literal force of chaos, seeking to unmake everything he had created. It was this detail that made Gawain's quest even more impossible. He was searching for a stable being that was, in reality, a being in a state of constant, terrifying flux. You watch as Gawain stops, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He looks up at the sky, his eyes filled with a sadness that seems to have no end. His quest wasn't just to find the Green Knight. It was to find a reason for his own existence, to make sense of the promises he had made. He never found the Green Knight's barrow because the Green Knight was not a being that could be buried. He was a force of nature that existed in an endless cycle of death and rebirth. The question that haunted Gawain, and the one that will become crucial to our story, is this. If a being of pure nature can exist without a physical resting place, what does that mean for the heroes who are bound by promises to them? Gawain's sorrow fades, and you are standing in a small, ancient chapel, the air thick with the scent of old stone and incense. In the center of the room, on a simple wooden altar, rests a small, unassuming chalice. This is the Holy Grail, the ultimate symbol of spiritual purity and divine power, yet it feels inert. It radiates not a holy light but a strange, subtle chill. The legend says the Grail has the power to heal and grant eternal life, but the truth is far more complex and bizarre. This is not a life-giving relic. 'Tis an anti-relic, a paradox that actively repels all who seek it. A psychological and spiritual weapon disguised as a sacred object. This is a common theme in ancient mysteries, the idea of a powerful artifact being so alien to the mortal mind that it drives a seeker to madness. The Grail's power is not in what it gives, but in what it takes away. It doesn't grant immortality. It makes the concept of a final, meaningful end impossible. It makes the pain of every past wound feel fresh and new. It's a trick, a cruel test for the human spirit. In Norse legends, many artifacts like the cursed ring in Varanot were said to bring only misfortune to their owners. A parallel to the Grail's deceptive nature, the Grail's paradoxical power is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their gifts. They are often not what they seem, and their blessings can be a form of divine punishment. The quest for the Holy Grail, which drove so many noble knights to their deaths, was not a search for a holy object, but a test of their spiritual resolve, a test they were all destined to fail. A quirky and macabre detail about the Grail is that it was said to be not a cup, but a single, perfectly smooth human tooth, taken from a nameless saint who had died of a broken heart. The tooth was believed to hold the memory of all the saint's unfulfilled desires, and it would project them into the minds of those who sought it. This is why the quest for the Grail was so personal and so maddening. Knight was not seeing a divine artifact, but a reflection of their own deepest, most unattainable desires. Lancelot saw the love of Guinevere. Galahad saw a purity he could never fully achieve, and so on. The Grail was a mirror, not a chalice. You can feel the weight of countless unfulfilled desires pressing down on you as you look at the tooth-like chalice. You realize that the quest for the Holy Grail wasn't just a physical journey, it was a psychological one, and the final destination was always madness. The Grail's true purpose was not to lead someone to a destination, but to lead them astray, to ensure that the hero's legacy would never be found. But the question that haunted the few who gave up the quest, the ones who saw the truth, was this. If the ultimate symbol of hope and salvation was a lie, what does that say about the fate of the man whose kingdom it was meant to save? The ghostly chapel dissolves, and you find yourself standing in a grotto, the air thick with the scent of ozone and bitter herbs. The light here is dim, cast by strange phosphorescent fungi that cling to the walls. You are in the heart of a place where reality bends and where old magic still holds sway. This is the inner sanctum of Morgana, the enigmatic and vengeful sorceress. The legends describe her as a villain, a jealous half-sister to Arthur. But the truth is far more nuanced. Morgana was a powerful deity in her own right, a figure of ancient Welsh folklore often associated with death and fate. Her ultimate goal was not just to bring down Arthur's kingdom, but to unmake his legacy entirely, to ensure that the memory of him and his noble ideals would fade into nothing. The shadow of Morgana is not just her physical presence. It is the psychological trap she set for all of time. Morgana's greatest and final trap was not for Arthur, but for the living. She wove a powerful spell, an intricate web of illusions and misdirections that would ensure that no one could ever find Arthur's true resting place. She didn't want him found, because to find his tomb would be to give him a place in history, to solidify his legend. She wanted to erase him. This is a subtle observation on the nature of gods and heroes. The ultimate power for a deity is not to kill, but to erase from history, to make a hero into a ghost with no story. This is a common theme in Greek mythology, where powerful curses are often designed to make a person's existence an act of spiritual and historical erasure. A bizarre detail about Morgana's magic is that it was said to be powered by the consumption of shadows. She would command her servants, twisted creatures of the Fae, to capture the shadows of mourners and travelers and feed them to her magical constructs. This is why her presence was often associated with a strange, oppressive gloom, and why travelers in her domain often felt a profound sense of psychological exhaustion. She was literally absorbing the darkness and sorrow from the world around her, using it as fuel for her vengeful spells. You feel a chill run down your spine as you realize the extent of Morgana's power. The quest for Arthur's tomb isn't just a search for a physical location. It's a battle against a psychological and magical force designed to keep the secret hidden forever. The rumors of her being a jealous sister are a simplified, mortal explanation for a power that is far beyond human comprehension. Her vengeance wasn't personal, it was cosmic. She saw Arthur as an aberration, a mortal man who dared to challenge the natural order of the Fae and the old gods. And she was determined to put him back in his place, which was nowhere. But the question that lingered, the one that Morgana herself could not answer, was this. Could a hero's memory truly be erased, or would it always linger, like a shadow waiting to be seen? Morgana's grotto dissolves, and you are standing on a quiet, mist-shrouded island. The air is still, and you hear only the gentle lapping of water against a rocky shore. There are 3 figures standing together, their faces obscured by the thick fog. These are the 3 queens who carried Arthur away on the skiff. They are the Lady of the Lake, Morgana, and the Queen of the Wastelands. This is the moment of the 3 queens' pact, a secret binding agreement made on this island to protect a timeless secret. The legends say they were taking Arthur to be healed, a beautiful lie meant to console a grieving kingdom. The truth is far more complex and far more terrifying. This isn't a pact of love or healing. It's a pact of concealment, a conspiracy of powerful deities to hide Arthur from the world forever. The pact was born of a great fear. The queens, figures of myth and ancient power, understood that Arthur was not just a king, but a nexus point for the mortal world. His existence, his power, and his legend had begun to unravel the fabric of reality itself. He was too good, too pure, too powerful. His very presence was beginning to blur the lines between the physical and the mythical. In Norse legends, this is a common theme, where a hero's divine nature can threaten the order of the cosmos, forcing the gods to act. The queens realized that if Arthur were to die and be given a burial site, his tomb would become a source of immense power, a beacon that would draw chaos and imbalance to the mortal world. They didn't want to save him. They wanted to neutralize him, to turn him from a threat back into a symbol. A bizarre detail about this pact is that it was sealed not with blood or a magical oath, but with a song. Each queen sang a single haunting note, and the notes, when combined, created a melody that could not be remembered once it had been heard. It was an anti-memory, a musical paradox. The song would be a constant nagging presence in their minds, a subconscious reminder of their promise, but they would never be able to recall the words or the tune itself. This is a subtle observation on the nature of gods and their rituals. They often use abstract, psychological means to bind themselves, not physical ones. You can almost hear the echoes of that song in the silent mist, a tune that you know but cannot recall. You feel the weight of their decision, the profound sadness of the truth. They were not burying a king. They were hiding a force of nature. They were not healing a hero. They were unmaking a man. The Lady of the Lake, often seen as a benevolent figure, had a chilling smile on her face. Morgana, the villain, had a look of profound sorrow. The third queen, a figure of silent mystery, had an expression you could not decipher. But the question that hung in the air, the one that the pact was designed to prevent anyone from asking, was this. If the queens, allies, and enemies alike agreed on this, what was the true nature of Arthur's power, and what was the world truly being saved from? The island fades, and you are standing on a quiet, windswept hill. The only other person here is an old knight, his armor tarnished and his face etched with a lifetime of sorrow. This is Sir Bedivere, the last surviving knight of the Round Table. The legends tell us that Arthur, in his dying moments, asked Bedivere to return Excalibur to the lake, and that Bedivere, after 2 attempts of deceit, finally obeyed. But this is not the full truth. The story of Bedivere's betrayal is not one of physical dishonesty, but of a much deeper, more painful truth. Bedivere didn't just lie about throwing the sword. He lied about Arthur's final wish. He was not told to return Excalibur to the lake. He was told to lie about it. This act of spiritual treachery was a part of a larger plan, a crucial piece of the conspiracy to hide Arthur from the world forever. The historical accounts of this event are deliberately vague, a common tactic used by chroniclers of the time to hide truths that were too dangerous or too strange to be recorded openly. Bedivere's role was to be the first and most credible witness to a false narrative. He was to be the person who would tell the world that Arthur was gone, that his power was returned, and that his legend was over. But in reality, he was the keeper of the most devastating secret. He was told by Arthur himself, as the last remnants of the king's life slipped away, to go and tell the world a lie. He was to create the first of many historical misdirections, a foundational lie that would build upon itself over centuries. This is a subtle observation on the nature of heroes and their ends. They are often the ones who create their own myths. Knowing that a beautiful lie is far more powerful than a painful truth. A bizarre detail about Arthur's final moments is that he was said to have made one last request of Bedivere. He did not ask him to throw the sword, but to instead take a single, unblinking black feather from the wing of an otherworldly raven and swallow it. The raven, a creature of the Fae, was a silent witness to all of Arthur's deeds, and the feather, a repository of every secret. By swallowing it, Bedivere was not just receiving a command. He was literally ingesting the weight of a secret he could never speak.
Yes.
The act of swallowing the feather was a physical manifestation of a spiritual burden, a oral representation of a vow of silence. You watch as Bedivere's face contorts in sorrow, not because he betrayed his king, but because he was forced to betray the truth. The tears in his eyes are not for the loss of a friend, but for the burden of a secret he will carry forever. He lived the rest of his days as a broken man, a hermit who would speak to no one. His very existence a silent testimony to the truth that could never be told. But the question that haunted him, the one that he could never speak, was this. If the greatest knight of the realm could be tasked with such a colossal lie, what was the truth that the world was not ready to hear? Bedivere's lonely vigil fades, and you find yourself in a strange, shimmering place. A forest where the trees are not made of wood but of light, and the ground feels like woven air. You hold a map in your hands, but it's a map that makes no sense. The rivers flow backward, the mountains shift and change shape, and the landmarks are all wrong. This is the time-woven map, an illusory chart created by the FAA to misdirect all who seek King Arthur's tomb. The map is not a physical object, but a psychic construct, a piece of Fae magic designed to lead the mind astray, to make the concept of a singular location for the tomb impossible. This is a common theme in ancient folklore, the idea of a magical artifact that can warp perception itself. The Fae, creatures of a different dimension, do not think in terms of linear space or time, and their creations reflect this. The map is a psychological weapon. As you look at it, the lines and symbols seem to move and shift, and you feel a strange sense of temporal displacement. You think you are looking for a location in the present. The map shows you a place that exists in the past and the future at the same time. This is a crucial element of the Fae's strategy. They didn't just want to hide the tomb. They wanted to make the very concept of a single physical burial site for Arthur an illogical impossibility. They wanted to confuse seekers, not with physical obstacles, but with a fundamental philosophical paradox. A quest for a fixed point in a world that is no longer fixed is a quest that is destined to fail. A bizarre detail about this map, one that is not found in most popular tales, is that it was said to be created using the dreams of sleeping heroes. The Fae would harvest the dreams of great warriors, dreams of their final battles and their desired resting places, and weave them into the fabric of the map. This is why the map is so alluring and so believably reflects the hopes and desires of those who seek the tomb, making the deception feel all the more real. It's a cruel trick, a beautiful lie created from the subconscious minds of the very people who would be deceived by it. You feel a wave of disorientation wash over you. You can see a landmark that you know to be in one place, but the map shows it in another. You realize that you are not just looking at a map. You are looking at a living lie, a thing of magic that is actively working to confuse you. This is a subtle observation on the nature of ancient deities and their creations. Their greatest power is not in what they can create, but in what they can unmake, what they can twist and distort to serve their purpose. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that the Fae hoped you would never ask, is this: if the map to Arthur's tomb is made of lies, what truth are the lies trying to conceal? The illusory map dissolves, and you find yourself in a quiet twilight space. The air is still, and there is a pervasive sense of emptiness, of something missing. You feel a strange kind of hunger, not for food, but for a memory you can't quite grasp. You are in the presence of a mythical chronophage, a deity that literally consumes the memory of a hero. This is a concept found in some of the most obscure ancient mysteries and folklore, the idea of a god that does not take life, but takes a story. This is a far more insidious and powerful act. A hero can be killed, but their memory can live on. A chronophage ensures that the hero is not just gone, but that they never existed in the first place. The chronophage is not a physical creature. It is a spiritual entity that exists in the liminal spaces between memories. It doesn't kill Arthur, it makes him forgotten.
Acting.
The chronophage was not acting out of malice, but out of a cosmic necessity. The gods of the old world, the deities of Greek mythology, and Norse legends understood that a hero like Arthur, a man who is both human and divine, was a dangerous anomaly. He was a force that could disrupt the natural order, and the only way to restore that order was to make his story unwritten. The chronophage was the ultimate tool for this purpose. Its power was not to destroy, but to absorb. To make a hero's narrative part of its own, to be digested and forgotten forever. A quirky detail about the chronophage is that it was said to have a preference for the memories of specific mundane items. It would consume the memory of a single rusty nail from a knight's armor, or a torn piece of a banner, or a single drop of rain from a final battle. It would leave the grand, epic memories in place, knowing that a seeker would chase after those, while the small, specific details, the true keys to a story, would be gone forever. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their methods. They often use a surgeonous precision, not a brute's force, to achieve their goals. By removing the small, supporting details, the chronophage ensured that the grand narrative of Arthur's life would become a hollow shell, a story with no substance. You can feel the chronophage's presence, a subtle, cold pressure in your mind. You try to remember a specific detail about Arthur, the color of his eyes, the sound of his laugh, but the memory is gone. You are left with a vague, generalized idea of a king, a heroic placeholder with no true substance. You realize that this is not a coincidence. This is the curse of the chronophage. It has been at work for centuries, eating away at the edges of Arthur's story, leaving only the beautiful, empty shell of a myth behind. But the question that begins to haunt you, the one that the chronophage hopes you will never ask, is this: if the memory of a hero can be consumed, what does that mean for the heroes of today? And what, if anything, can be truly remembered? The void of forgotten memories dissipates, and you stand on a vast windswept plain, the air still and cold.
Ow.
Before you rise the silent monolithic stones of Stonehenge, their forms casting long, eerie shadows in the moonlight. This is not just a prehistoric monument. It is a timeless burial marker. The mainstream historical fact is that Stonehenge's purpose remains a mystery, a temple, an observatory, a burial ground. But the legend, the one that whispers in the air around the stones, tells a different story. This is the truth of Stonehenge's silent watch, a place whose real purpose is to mark a burial that no one can ever find. The stones were not built by mortals, but by a primordial race of giants, and they were placed here for a single cosmic purpose: to be the grave marker for a hero whose body was never meant to be buried. The stones are not a tomb. They're a signpost for a tomb that exists in a different dimension. The physical stones are just the anchor points, the visible tips of a much larger interdimensional marker. This is a common theme in ancient mysteries and Norse legends. The idea of a physical location being a spiritual gateway or a symbolic representation of a larger cosmic truth. Think of the Norse god Odin, who used the physical world as a roadmap to the 9 realms. The stones are a physical manifestation of a psychological truth. They tell you to look for a tomb, but they are also a paradox, a giant lie that points to nothing in our reality. A bizarre detail about Stonehenge, often omitted from the guides, is that the stones are said to contain the memories of every person who has ever stood among them. The giant who placed the stones, a deity of immense power, cursed them to absorb the psychic residue of all who visited. Over millennia, the stones have become a living archive of human hopes, sorrows, and quests. A quiet, non-physical library of every secret ever sought within its hallowed grounds. When you stand among the stones, you feel not just the ancient history, but a wave of collective sorrow from all the thousands of souls who have stood here seeking answers that never came. You feel a profound sense of awe and a deep, unsettling sadness. The stones are a testament to a grand deception. They are so massive, so imposing, so real, that they make you believe that what they are pointing to must also be real. But they are just a decoy, a beautiful, magnificent lie, designed to make you look in the wrong place for all of eternity. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities in their creations. They often create something so grand and so beautiful that the viewer is blinded to the simple, obvious truth. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that the stones themselves are whispering in a language you can't quite understand, is this. If the greatest burial marker in the world marks a place that doesn't exist, what does that say about the fate of the man whose legend it was built to protect? The stones of Stonehenge fade into the mist, and you are standing in a strange, otherworldly glen. The trees here are impossibly tall, and the light that filters through their leaves is a soft, ethereal gold. The air is filled with the sound of music, not from an instrument, but from the wind itself as it passes through the ancient boughs. You are in the realm of the Fae, a dimension that exists in the in-between, and you are about to learn about the Fae's first law. This is a foundational principle of their existence. They cannot directly reveal a mortal truth. They can deceive you, confuse you, or lead you astray with riddles and illusions. But they cannot give you the simple, unadorned truth. This is a common theme in ancient folklore and Greek mythology, where deities bound by cosmic laws must use subtlety and trickery to interact with the mortal world. The Fae's first law is not a moral code, it is a cosmic one. It is a fundamental rule of their existence, an unspoken contract with the mortal realm. To give a mortal the answer to a profound mystery would be to break the natural order, to blur the lines between their reality and ours in a way that would be catastrophic. This is why their riddles are so maddening, why their maps are so confusing, and why their promises are so full of loopholes. They are bound by a law that forces them to be indirect, to be enigmatic, and to be masters of beautiful, intricate lies. A bizarre detail about the Fae's first law is that it was said to have been a punishment for a single, forgotten act of kindness. A long time ago, a powerful Fae lord, in a moment of sympathy, revealed a simple truth to a mortal king. The revelation caused the king to go mad, and the consequences of this single act were so catastrophic that the High Council of the Fae enacted the first law. The story goes that the Fae Lord was not just punished for his transgression. He was cursed to forever speak in only simple, unadorned truths, a fate that drove him insane. The Fae, a race of tricksters and deceivers, fear nothing more than the truth, for they have seen what it can do to a mortal mind. You watch as a beautiful Fae creature, a being of light and shadow, approaches you. You ask it where Arthur's tomb is. It smiles sadly and gestures to a nearby stream. The water flows to the sea, it says, a simple, undeniable truth. But you know that the stream also flows to 100 other places, and that the sea is a metaphor for a truth that you are not meant to understand. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their communication. They do not speak in words, but in symbols and metaphors, a language that requires the mortal mind to do the work of interpretation. But the question that begins to haunt you, the one that the Fae's first law was designed to prevent you from ever answering, is this. If the truth is so dangerous that even gods and deities must hide it, what does that say about the fate of the man whose secret is so carefully protected? The shimmering Fae glen dissolves, and you are standing in an ancient abbey, its stones worn smooth by centuries of rain and wind. You can feel a sense of profound stillness, a place where time seems to stand still. This is Glastonbury Abbey, the historical site where monks claim to have discovered King Arthur and Queen Guinevere's tomb in the 12th century. The mainstream historical fact is that this discovery was a pivotal moment in solidifying the Arthurian legend in the public imagination. But the legend, the one that whispers from the very stones, tells us that this was not a genuine discovery. It was the empty coffin of Glastonbury, a meticulously planned grand illusion. The discovery was a masterful act of misdirection. A fake burial site created to satisfy the public's desire for a physical tomb and, more importantly, to end the search once and for all. This illusion was a collaborative effort between the church, the crown, and the ancient magical orders. The church, which was trying to legitimize its power, wanted to co-opt the legend of King Arthur, turning a pagan hero into a Christian symbol. The crown, in a time of political unrest, needed a unifying national myth. The magical orders, including the Fae and Merlin's apprentices, needed to create a final, definitive answer that would stop the ceaseless search for the real tomb. The discovery was not a miracle, it was a conspiracy, a brilliant and effective piece of psychological manipulation. By giving the people a beautiful, tangible lie, they ensured that the more dangerous, unquantifiable truth would remain hidden forever. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their interaction with the mortal world. They often work through mortals, using their institutions and their desires to achieve their own inscrutable goals. A bizarre detail about this discovery is that the monks who allegedly found the tomb were said to have suffered from a strange form of aphasia. They could recall every detail of the dig and the grand procession, but they could not remember what the inscription on the coffin lid actually said. A chronicler from the period noted that the words seemed to move in their minds, changing and shifting like dust in the wind. This was not a natural affliction. It was a magical guess, a spell woven into the illusion itself, to ensure that no one could ever read the true meaning of the inscription.
The text was not a marker of a hero's rest.
You stand in the ruins of the abbey, and you feel a sense of profound peace. You realize that this peace is a lie, a tranquil illusion designed to make you complacent. The empty space where the tomb once was is a monument to a beautiful deception. The search for a hero's tomb is not a journey into the past. It is a battle against the past, against the powerful forces that have conspired to keep the truth from you. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that the empty coffin was designed to make you forget, is this. If the greatest minds in the world conspired to hide Arthur, what was it about his final fate that was so dangerous that it had to be hidden from everyone? The abbey's illusion shatters, and you find yourself in a deep, dark cavern. The air is warm and smells of sulfur and burnt earth. In the center of the cavern lies a massive skeleton, its bones glowing with a faint internal light. It's not just a cave. It is a tomb, but not for a hero. It is the final resting place of a dragon, and its death was not in battle, but in service of a greater cause. This is the truth of the dragon's last breath. The legends of dragons are full of fire and rage, but in ancient lore, particularly in Welsh mythology, dragons were often seen as symbols of creation and cosmic power. Their final moments were not of destruction, but of transformation. The dragon you were looking at was not a beast of conquest, but a guardian. In its final dying moments, it did not breathe fire. It breathed a powerful, magical vapor, a final, unmaking breath that created an invisible, magical barrier around King Arthur's true final resting place. The barrier is not a physical wall. It's a field of pure magic that makes the space it encloses utterly undetectable to mortals. It hides the tomb not by blocking the way, but by making it non-existent to mortal perception. It's a psychological and physical shield, a genius act of magical concealment. This is a common theme in ancient mysteries and Norse legends. The idea of a hero's sacred space being protected by a powerful spiritual barrier. A bizarre detail about this dragon is that it was said to have a crippling addiction to a specific crystalline salt that would cause it to hallucinate. A chronicler from the time noted that the dragon would wander the land, roaring and fighting phantoms that only it could see. This detail is not just a quirky aside. It is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their flaws. The greatest and most powerful beings are often the most fragile. Their immense power, balanced by a profound and often bizarre weakness. This dragon's final unmaking breath was not an act of will, but of profound drug-induced grief, a final, beautiful act of loyalty performed in a state of utter mental chaos. You can feel the heat radiating from the bones, and you feel a strange sense of sorrow. The dragon, this creature of immense power, died not in a blaze of glory, but in a final act of quiet, unappreciated loyalty. His death was the final lock on the prison that holds Arthur's secret. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that the dragon's last breath was meant to make you forget, is this. What could a man have done to earn the loyalty of a dragon? And what secret could be so powerful that it required the death of a god to protect it? Lancelot's vigil fades into the crashing waves, and you are standing in a magnificent cathedral. The light from the stained glass windows casts kaleidoscopic colors across the stone floor, illuminating the solemn, beautiful statues of saints. Wow. This is not just a place of worship. It is the stage for the deceit of saints. The historical fact is that the Church, particularly during the Middle Ages, played a crucial role in shaping and preserving the legends of heroes. But the legend, the one that whispers in the corners of the cathedral, tells us that this was not an act of preservation. It was a masterful copting of a pagan hero for a Christian purpose. The Church's covert role was to mythologize a forgotten warrior, to turn a symbol of an old age into a symbol of a new one, all while ensuring his true, dangerous legacy remained hidden forever. The Church, in its quest for power and influence, did not want to destroy the myth of Arthur. They wanted to control it. They couldn't allow a powerful pagan hero to exist outside of their domain. So they began a subtle campaign of remythologizing. They wove stories of the Holy Grail, a powerful Christian relic, into the Arthurian legends, turning a secular quest into a spiritual one. They turned the magician Merlin, a symbol of old wild magic, into a prophet of Christ. And they turned Arthur, a mortal king with a divine destiny, into a saint, a figure of spiritual purity who would, of course, have to be buried in a sacred, but ultimately fake, Christian grave. This is a common theme in Greek mythology and ancient mysteries, where a new religion or power structure often absorbs and rebrands the myths of a conquered people. A bizarre detail about this deceit is that a small order of monks, known as the Silent Scribes, were tasked with altering the ancient manuscripts. They would not just change words. They would use a bizarre ink made from crushed amethyst and the tears of a mythical creature called a lochemy. An ink that, when applied, would cause the original words to simply vanish from the page. A chronicler from the time noted that these scribes would sometimes go mad, claiming to see ghosts of forgotten words swirling in the air around them. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their creations. They often use a surgeon's precision, it's not a brute's force, to achieve their goals, by removing the small supporting details. The Church ensured that the grand narrative of Arthur's life would become a hollow shell, a story with no substance. You can feel a sense of profound unease in the beautiful cathedral. You realize that the very faith that claims to venerate Arthur's memory is the one that has been working the hardest to hide him. The beautiful windows and the solemn statues are a part of a grand deception, a magnificent lie designed to make you complacent. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that the Church's deceit was designed to make you forget, is this: if a religious institution built on faith can lie so profoundly, what truth about Arthur was so dangerous that it had to be hidden at all costs? The echoing prophecy fades, and you stand on a lonely, wind-swept coastline. The air is thick with the scent of salt and melancholy. You see a lone figure, a man kneeling in prayer on a barren rock. This is Sir Lancelot, a man who, in the legends, is both a hero and a traitor. The historical fact is that Lancelot spent the rest of his life as a hermit, living in penance for his affair with Queen Guinevere. But this is not the full truth. This is the story of Lancelot's true penance, a solitary pilgrimage to safeguard Arthur's final resting place. A secret far greater than his own guilt. Lancelot's betrayal of Arthur was real, but it was also a convenient cover story. The love between him and Guinevere was a profound and tragic affair. But it was also a masterful piece of misdirection, a grand spectacle that gave the world a reason to hate him, and more importantly, a reason to forget about his true mission. His penance was not just for his sin, but for his knowledge. He knew where Arthur was, and his hermitage was not a place of solitude, but a silent, eternal vigil. His job was to be the first and most credible person to never find Arthur, to be the living testament to the fact that the search was futile. This is a common theme in Greek mythology and ancient mysteries. The idea of a hero's fall from grace being a disguise for a greater, more profound purpose. A bizarre detail about Lancelot's penance is that he was said to have made a pact with a non-verbal deity of the sea, a god who could only communicate through the patterns of waves on the shore. Lancelot would spend his days studying the patterns, and the god would, in turn, show him the comings and goings of any who dared to look for Arthur's resting place. The god would warn him of approaching seekers, and Lancelot would, in his own silent way, lead them astray. His penance was not just a personal journey, it was an act of cosmic deception. He was the guardian of a secret so profound that it required him to live a life of eternal sadness. You watch as Lancelot rises, his face etched with a pain that has no end. He is a living paradox, a man who is both a hero and a villain, a symbol of both love and betrayal. He is the first line of defense for a secret that must never be found. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that Lancelot's silence was designed to prevent you from ever asking, is this: if the greatest knight in the world was tasked with a life of eternal sadness to protect a secret, what was the nature of that secret, and was it a truth worth the price of a hero's soul? The cathedral's beautiful illusion fades, and you are standing on a quiet, wind-swept hill. The air is still, and there is a sense of profound calm. This is a world without a hero. Legends tell us that a hero is what the world needs to survive, to fight off the darkness and the monsters. But the truth is far more complex. The historical fact is that every great hero, from Achilles to King Arthur, leaves a power vacuum, psychological and spiritual void that is often filled by chaos and despair. This is the truth of a world without heroes, a world where the absence of a hero is not a tragedy, but a necessary act to preserve the world's balance. The gods, the Fae, and the ancient deities understood this. They knew that a hero's power was a double-edged sword. While it could bring salvation, it could also bring destruction on a cosmic scale. The quests, the battles, the very existence of a hero disrupts the natural order, creating ripples in the fabric of reality. The purpose of hiding Arthur was not to save him, but to save the world from him. His final resting place is hidden not in a tomb, but in a state of non-existence, a state that allows the world to find its own way to rely on itself and to build a future that is not dependent on a single fallible man. This is a common theme in Greek mythology and ancient mysteries. The idea of a hero's final sacrifice being the ultimate act of selflessness, a giving up of power for the good of the world. A bizarre detail about this concept is that the gods, in their wisdom, created a small, harmless creature called a mnemon, a small, firefly-like being that would feed on the collective belief in heroes. A chronicler from the time noted that these creatures would gather in the fields where a great battle had been fought and would consume the psychic residue of heroism, ensuring that the next generation of mortals would not be so dependent on a single figure. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their methods. They do not need to fight battles. They can simply unmake the reasons for them. You stand on the hill, and you feel a sense of profound peace. There are no heroes to worship, no monsters to fear, and no great quests to embark upon. You realize that this is not a world of despair. It is a world of quiet strength, a world that has learned to stand on its own 2 feet. The absence of a hero is not a tragedy. It is the ultimate act of liberation. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that the world without a hero was designed to make you forget, is this: if the greatest heroes are sacrificed for the good of the world, what does that say about the nature of our need for them? The cathedral's beautiful illusion fades, and you are standing on a quiet, wind-swept hill. The air is still, and there is a sense of profound calm. This is a world without a hero. The legends tell us that a hero is what the world needs to survive, to fight off the darkness and the monsters. But the truth is far more complex. The historical fact is that every great hero, from Achilles to King Arthur, leaves a power vacuum, a psychological and spiritual void that is often filled by chaos and despair. This is the truth of a world without heroes, a world where the absence of a hero is not a tragedy, but a necessary act to preserve the world's balance. The gods, the Fae, and the ancient deities understood this. They knew that a hero's power was a double-edged sword. While it could bring salvation, it could also bring destruction on a cosmic scale. The quests, the battles, the very existence of a hero disrupts the natural order, creating ripples in the fabric of reality. The purpose of hiding Arthur was not to save him, but to save the world from him. His final resting place is hidden not in a tomb, but in a state of non-existence, a state that allows the world to find its own way to rely on itself. and to build a future that is not dependent on a single fallible man. This is a common theme in Greek mythology and ancient mysteries. The idea of a hero's final sacrifice being the ultimate act of selflessness, a giving up of power for the good of the world. A bizarre detail about this concept is that the gods, in their wisdom, created a small, harmless creature called a mnemon, a small, firefly-like being that would feed on the collective belief in heroes. A chronicler from the time noted that these creatures would gather in the fields where a great battle had been fought and would consume the psychic residue. Act of bow wall of heroism, ensuring that the next generation of mortals would not be so dependent on a single figure. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their methods. They do not need to fight battles. They can simply unmake the reasons for them. You stand on the hill, and you feel a sense of profound peace. There are no heroes to worship, no monsters to fear, and no great quests to embark upon. You realize that this is not a world of despair. It is a world of quiet strength, a world that has learned to stand on its own 2 feet. The absence of a hero is not a tragedy. It is the ultimate act of liberation. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that the world without a hero was designed to make you forget, is this. If the greatest heroes are sacrificed for the good of the world, what does that say about the nature of our need for them? The serene hill fades, and you find yourself standing on the bottom of an ancient sea. The water is clear, and the light that filters down from above is a soft, ethereal blue. Before you lies a city, its buildings worn smooth by centuries of ocean currents. This is the lost library of Lyonesse, a city of myth and legend that was said to have been swallowed by the sea. The historical fact is that Lyonesse is considered a mythical place, a city that exists only in legend. But the legend, the one that whispers in the silent water, tells us that it was a real place, and its library holds the final key to Arthur's secret. But it is a key you can never use. The library, a magnificent structure made of a strange, bioluminescent stone, holds an archive of all the knowledge of the old world. But it holds one item that is of particular importance. On a pedestal in the center of the library lies a single unreadable book. This is the Book of the King, a repository of every single truth about Arthur's life, from his birth to his death and his final, unfindable resting place. But the book is unreadable, not because the language is unknown, but because it is a book of truth, and the human mind is not capable of comprehending pure, unadulterated reality. A bizarre detail about this book is that its pages are made of a solidified mist from the Isle of Avalon, a substance that is both physical and non-physical. When you touch the pages, you don't feel paper. You feel an idea, a thought, a truth that is too big for your mind to hold. You can look at the words on the page, but your brain cannot process them. It's a psychological and spiritual defense mechanism. The book is not locked. It's simply incomprehensible. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their knowledge. They do not hide information in physical locks. They hide it in a form that the mortal mind cannot grasp. You feel a sense of profound awe and frustration. You are so close to the truth, and yet it is as far away as the stars. You can almost hear the unreadable words humming with a silent cosmic power. The library is not a prison for the book. It is a museum, a place to show you the truth while ensuring you can never have it. It's a cruel trick, a beautiful, maddening act of cosmic irony. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that the unreadable book was designed to make you forget, is this. If the truth is so dangerous that it must be hidden in a book that couldn't be read, what does that say about the fate of the man whose life is contained within its pages? The watery depths of Lyonesse fade, and you are standing in a small, simple convent. The air is still and smells of beeswax and old wood. A quiet, older woman, her face a tapestry of sorrow and grace, is tending to a small garden. This is Guinevere, the legendary queen whose love for Lancelot shattered a kingdom. But this is not the Guinevere you know from the stories. The historical fact is that she spent the rest of her life as a nun, living a life of quiet penance. But this is not the full truth. This is the story of the queen's final confession, an unseen sacrifice to protect her king's legacy, a truth that she could never speak aloud. Guinevere's penance was not just for her betrayal of Arthur. It was for her knowledge of his true fate. She was not a prisoner in the convent. She was a silent guardian, a living lie. She knew where Arthur was, and her silence was the ultimate act of loyalty. Her public life was a beautiful, tragic story of a love triangle. A story so compelling that it would distract the world from the far more dangerous truth. Her penance was a psychological fortress, a perfect cover story that would make anyone who came looking for answers believe she was simply too broken to have any. A bizarre detail about Guinevere's time in the convent is that she was said to have made a habit of collecting the wings of dead butterflies. She would then arrange them in strange, intricate patterns on the wall of her cell. A chronicler from the time noted that these patterns, when seen from a certain angle, formed a perfect map of the stars as they would appear in 1,000 years, a chilling and beautiful prophecy of a future she would never see. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their knowledge. They do not need to speak their secrets. They can simply leave them in the open in a form that only the most dedicated and clever will ever find. You watch as Guinevere tends to her garden, a small, sad smile on her face. Her life is a living paradox, a testament to a great love and an even greater lie. She is the final guardian of Arthur's secret, a woman who sacrificed not just her happiness, but her very soul, to protect a truth that the world was not ready for. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that her silence was designed to make you forget, is this. If a queen's betrayal was a public lie to protect a private truth, what does that say about the nature of love, honor, and sacrifice? Guinevere's silent vigil fades, and you find yourself in a strange, shifting landscape. The memories of what you have seen, the barrows, the lake, the abbey seem to blend and contradict each other. You remember the dragon's breath, but you can't remember where the cavern was. You remember the unreadable book, but you can't recall the name of the library. You are experiencing the anamnesis curse, a psychic spell that makes memory itself an unreliable narrator. This is a common theme in Greek mythology and ancient mysteries, where a god's curse is not a physical one, but a mental one, designed to erode a hero's mind or a seeker's resolve. The anamnesis curse was the final and most powerful piece of the conspiracy to hide King Arthur's tomb. It was a spell woven by the Fae, the gods, and the magical orders, a final, unmaking act that would ensure that even if someone were to stumble upon the truth, they would not be able to remember it. It doesn't erase memories, makes them unreliable, a kaleidoscope of half-truths and contradictory details. You can remember the events, but you can't remember the specifics that would connect them. You can remember the journey, but you can't remember the destination. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their power. Their greatest weapon is not a sword, but a lie so subtle that it makes you doubt your own mind. A bizarre detail about this curse is that it was said to be powered by the echoes of forgotten songs. The Fae would collect the melodies of ancient, unremembered ballads and weave them into the fabric of the curse. The more you tried to remember something, the more the song would play in your mind, a haunting, beautiful tune that would fill your thoughts and make the memory of what you were looking for slip away like sand through your fingers. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their methods. They do not need to fight battles. They can simply fill the world with so much psychological noise that the truth can never be heard. You feel a sense of profound disorientation and a deep, gnawing fear. You realize that everything you have seen, everything you have learned, is potentially a lie. The curse has been at work for centuries, eating away at the edges of Arthur's story. It's making it into a grand, beautiful, and utterly untraceable ghost story. You are a part of the curse, a temporary vessel for a truth that you cannot and will not be able to hold. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that the anamnesis curse was designed to make you forget, is this: if the truth is not a physical place, but a memory, what does it mean to be a hero, and what is the true nature of a legend that can never be found? The mental fog of the anamnesis curse lifts, but you are not in the real world. You're in a place that feels impossibly vast and impossibly small at the same time. The air shimmers with a soft ambient light, and you hear a sound like a distant single chime. You are in the unseen kingdom, a realm that exists in an impossible, non-physical dimension. This is not the physical world, not the mythical world, but a place that is outside of all things. It is in this place that King Arthur's true final resting place lies. It is not a tomb, it is a state of being. The unseen kingdom is not a secret place, it is a place that cannot be seen. It exists in the space between heartbeats, in the silence between thoughts. This is where Arthur was taken by the three queens. They didn't just take his body, they unmade his existence, turning him from a physical man into a non-physical idea. His final resting place is not a barrow or a tomb. It is an abstract concept, a place that can only be accessed by a mind that has transcended the need for a physical reality. This is a common theme in Greek mythology and ancient mysteries. The idea of a hero's final form being a spiritual one, a transformation from a human to a god. The heroes of Norse legends who are taken to Valhalla are not just killed. They are transformed into a state of eternal glory, a spiritual existence that is outside of the physical world. A bizarre detail about this realm is that it is said to be populated by the ghosts of all the world's forgotten ideas. A chronicler from the time noted that if you were to look closely, you would see the shimmering ghost-like forms of all the civilizations that could have been all the books that were never written and all the songs that were never sung. The unseen kingdom is not just a place for a hero to rest. It is a library of all the possibilities that never were. It is a place of infinite potential and profound loneliness. You feel a sense of profound calm and a deep, unsettling sadness. You are in the presence of a truth so profound that it cannot be described. You are looking at a place that exists outside of your comprehension. And in the distance, you can see a shimmering, ghost-like form of a man, his face obscured by a soft golden light. This is Arthur, but not the man you knew. This is a hero who has transcended his own legend, a man who has become an idea. But the question that begins to form in your mind, the one that his final resting place was designed to make you forget, is this. If a hero's final fate is to become an idea, what does that say about the nature of our own reality and the heroes we create to make sense of it? The unseen kingdom shimmers and fades, and you are standing alone in a place of quiet reflection. The air is still, and there is a sense of finality. You have traveled through barrows, across lakes, and into impossible realms. You have learned of curses, deceits, and illusions, all designed to hide a single, profound truth. This is the hero's final rest, and the chilling truth about what it means to be truly unfindable. Arthur's tomb is not a physical place, because his final resting place is not physical. He is not buried in a barrow, a cave, or an abbey. He is not sleeping in Avalon. He is not dead, nor is he alive. He is a ghost, a legend, a myth, a piece of something that exists outside of our reality. The reason nobody can find his tomb is because there is nothing to find. His final resting place is a paradox, a place that is both here and not here, both now and not now. It is a concept, an idea, a truth so simple and so profound that it cannot be held in a human mind. The entire conspiracy, the three queens, the Fae, the church, the knights, and the gods was not about hiding a physical object. It was about protecting a philosophical and spiritual truth. They knew that if the world were to know that a hero's final fate was to become an idea, a piece of something that exists outside of reality, it would unravel the very fabric of human belief. It would mean that all our heroes are just stories, and that all our myths are just beautiful lies we tell ourselves to make sense of a chaotic world. A bizarre detail about this final, unfindable state is that the Fae who maintain it are said to be perpetually in a state of quiet, melancholic joy. They are happy that the truth is safe, but they are sad that it had to be a truth that mortals could not comprehend. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities and their relationships with mortals. They are not our enemies or our saviors. They are simply the caretakers of a universe that is far more complex and far more beautiful than we can ever imagine. You feel a profound sense of calm. The frantic search, the anxiety, the frustration is all gone. The truth is simple, and it has been in front of you all along. The greatest heroes do not die. They do not go to a heaven or a hell. They become something else. They become a part of the universe, a piece of the very fabric of reality. They become an idea, a whisper on the wind, a ghost in the annals of history. The search for King Arthur's tomb is a quest for a beautiful lie, a quest for a story that we desperately want to believe. But the truth is far stranger and far more beautiful. The king is not sleeping. He is not waiting for his return. He is all around you. He is in the stories, in the songs, in the myths, and in the very air that you breathe. He is a legend that is not just told, but lived. He is a part of us all, and in that, he is truly unfindable. The sounds of the waves, the ancient voices, and the mystical wind begin to fade, leaving you in a quiet, tranquil space. You can still feel the weight of the truths you've just heard, but they no longer feel like a burden. The grand and epic nature of the journey gives way to a sense of profound peace. The suspense dissipates, replaced by a quiet awe. The story of King Arthur isn't a single tale of a king and his knights. It's a cosmic mystery about the nature of heroes, gods, and mortals. The search for his tomb is a journey not to a place, but into the very heart of what we believe. The final truth is not a revelation, but a gentle realization that the most powerful legends are not the ones we can find, but the ones that become a part of us. The whispers of the past are not calls for help, but an invitation to understand a deeper, more beautiful reality. Let the questions go. Close your eyes and let the truth settle in your soul. The story of Arthur is not a story of finding. It is a story of letting go.